Hi everyone! Let me know if you can hear me alright. I've got my webcam plugged in, and hopefully it's only going to pick up me and not the child across the street who's very upset about stuff. I don't know, he's just been crying for the last 5 minutes or so. Yeah, so welcome to the stream. I'm streaming a couple minutes early because I have a tendency to babble. And I know there are some of you who know that it starts at 4, and if you're like me, fashionably late. So, I still have not figured out why I can't get my Galaxy S22 to not have this blinking problem whenever I stream with it. But you know what? I think we'll just go with my 4K camera, because then there's going to be fewer issues with just recording and getting like quality. And I have some ideas for after I move what to do with some of the topics. So I think I might just skip figuring out that problem unless, you know, I'm out and about and at a Samsung Galaxy unit, like we've got one in the city center. And I remember I might actually just stop by and see what I can figure out. But until then, we're going to go with just this slightly more elaborate setup, but you know what? It's probably going to be fine. At some point, I will get a better microphone so that I don't end up talking over here, because the camera's or the microphone is over here, so there's not going to be any issues with the sound quality. But yeah, so welcome everybody. Glad you could be here. So I'm kind of in that stage of packing where when you first start packing, you like pack up the stuff you don't use every single day, right? It's like the stuff that's just around. For me, that's like books. So I don't usually read all of my books at the same time. That would be weird. So I got all those packed up, and I was feeling pretty good. Felt like I was making progress. And then I've packed up some other stuff like clothes. We've pretty much just got like a week's worth of clothing and like stuff that we've worn that we're gonna wash, and then just pack everything up that last day. But now I'm in that spot in between where I've got a lot of stuff packed, and I'm looking around thinking, how are we going to do this? We have a week from today. How are we going to get the rest of the stuff packed? I know it's going to be possible. It's not a big deal, but it's just because I've already been doing it for a full week and a half, and now I'm going to be doing it for another week, plus also cleaning. This is a bit of a reprieve. So I hope it is for you. If I come off sounding really tired, it's because I am. So yeah. Anyway, today we are going to be talking about bats. Now, I know I said that I was going to get bats in to the shop this week, because I've got a few that I made and I've not been able to list them yet. I got the spindles in, I've got some other bits and bobs photographed. I'm just going to try and get them edited, put into the shop. But I don't know if it's going to make it. I will at some point need to pack up all of my photography stuff, which right now is just in the way. So yeah, if you've ever had a bat by me, one that you've made, something you bought from somebody else, something you were gifted, you've probably seen something kind of like this. Yeah, pack one room at a time. So, apologies. I've got the window curtains open a little bit so that Layla can still be in the sunshine. I don't know if it's really coming up very well on the stream for you guys. I don't want to take the sunbeam from the cat. So, maybe you can kind of see that on the stream. So there's a lot of texture in this bat, and like I said, this is the Shetland. And I carded this in anticipation of spinning it for the Tour de Fleece. I wanted something special for myself. So yeah, hopefully you've been able to see that all right. Yeah, packing is very overwhelming. I know it'll get done. It always gets done. And I'm actually trying to decide whether to pack up my wheel or just leave it as is, because this has actually never occurred to me before. I've always been in a position where I have to dismantle it. But since we're only driving like a little over 2 hours to get to the location, I don't know if it's possible to just spin with it and then it be the very last thing loaded into the truck. 'Cause there's always like that small stuff that just doesn't really fit in a moving truck, and so they always overcompensate, because if you're like packing a lamp, like one of those tall floor lamps, you might just move it as it is. So like, I don't know, we'll see. I have a box set out for it just in case, but I'd really just not bother with it. Even though it doesn't take that long to disassemble and put back together, I want to be working on it until the day we leave. Yeah, so anyway, you've probably had a bat like this. You may still have one. Maybe you find them a little bit intimidating. I know when I first started working with bats, I was really intimidated by texture. And this is probably because of my own need to make perfectly even yarn. It's like one of those things when you start off spinning, you want it to be absolutely perfect. But in this case, what I want to do is keep some of this texture, which is just sari silk. I think it's Shetland, sari silk, Angelina, and yak down. So it's really, really soft and squishy. I love it so much. But the sari silk and the yak down are going to be very short stapled, and because of that, they're going to naturally create some texture. And a little bit with the Shetland, I think there was some maybe second cuts in there, but there's a little bit of short bits from the Shetland, so that's creating some texture. And I've already got a bobbin here, and I'll take that off to show you what I'm talking about, because the goal of this video today, and something that I really like doing, probably shouldn't do quite as much as I do, I really control the yarn that I'm making, sometimes a bit too much, and so I end up taking a lot of the vibrancy out of it in order to fit a gauge. And I don't always have a project in mind when I'm spinning, so one of the main issues is if I take away all of that character, what's distinguishing what I've spun from something that I could just buy commercially, right? So one of the things about hand spinning is being able to design a yarn that you want, and sometimes being able to control that amount of texture is good, but not always. So this is my wheelhouse. This is what I feel like I'm pretty good at. So this is bobbin number 1. And I am going to be doing a video on this later. I've got some filming that I've done already. But yeah, hopefully you can see some of those textured bits. I think you could probably see the yellow the most. Well, it's definitely not matted. I actually didn't go through all of my hellos. So, who we've got? We've got Sonia, Chris, Cheryl, Vernon, Debbie. I think I saw someone else. Usually Crystal's here. But yeah, so it's definitely not matted. It's really soft. I think I carded this 3 or 4 times to get it pretty smooth. And the way that I like to do that is whenever I'm working with the fleece, I'll card the fleece by itself, and then I'll start carding it with the additions. And then for this, because I wanted something that was more like a tweed, I think I put it through at least 3 times, possibly 4 times through the drum carder. Yeah, so this is really nice stuff. Now, it's going to be difficult moving the camera around a lot, so I might need to bring the yarn up to the camera to show you. This is literally the only room in the entire house that I have access to where I could actually sit and be in front of my wheel and have a camera, so I take up pretty large space right now. And so there's not a lot of room for me to move things around at the moment. So yeah, the goal with this is to make a traditional 3-ply, and this is sort of in keeping with the 3-plies I was doing for the Gulf Coast Native, which if you watched that video, that came out last week. And there were a fair number of you who've actually worked with Gulf Coast Native, so I was pretty excited about that. And there was also some people on Instagram, so if you go to the post on my Instagram, you'll get sort of a greater idea of what it's like working with that fleece, beyond what I was able to put out for the Fiber Talk episode. So whenever you're changing bobbins, it's always good practice to go ahead and oil it up before you start spinning. And then I'm just checking the tension here a little bit. Just so I get the uptake the way that I want it to. And I'm aiming for something that's going to be probably between a sport up to a DK weight, and it's going to be quite consistent. Dropping everything. Hi, Wanda. So, because I'm still looking for a consistent gauge, my main goal while I'm spinning is to concentrate on the thickness of the wool and be less concerned about those extra bits that I've added in. So for example, I'm going to just, you've got your whole batt here like this. So I'm just going to pull off the strip from one side. And then you'll see once we kind of get going a little bit what I'm talking about. But again, this is mainly done with what the fingers are doing, so I'm going to have to leave some of the finer details for a later video, because it's just going to be too difficult to do with a live stream. But the first thing I'm going to do before spinning is I've pulled off the strip and I'm pre-drafting the fiber a little bit. And that's just to help with getting my gauge really consistent. Now, if you're just making a highly textured yarn, you may not even have to do this. Carded batts tend to be quite lofty in general, and this has not been sitting in storage for very long, so it really hasn't had time to compress. So once you've kind of gotten your strip pre-drafted like this, I'm just going to get it going on the wheel, and whenever I encounter a slubby bit, I just leave it. So I've encountered one already, so you can kind of see here. It's a pretty consistent yarn, and then there's this slubby bit right there. So hopefully you can see that slubby bit. If I get the camera to focus, there we go. Get some light from the window. Get it centered. Yeah, so you can probably see that that's a big slubby bit. So that's basically all this is. I just want to preserve those slubby bits when I encounter them. But the wool, I'm trying to draft the wool part so that it stays really consistent. So what you'll be left with is a yarn that is really consistently spun, but it has some more visual character. So I'll show you this little bit here. Goodness, get the right hands here. So I'm trying to manage the lighting here so that you can kind of see that. But maybe you can kind of see that there's that slubby bit in the middle, even if it's a bit fuzzy and out of focus. Ugh. Yeah. Sometimes I wish I had 3 hands so you could, ow, get everything focused with the one hand. But yeah, you can see this little bit right here is a bit fuzzier, fluffier. Yeah. I can't see anything with this. Okay. That's what happens when you can't bring all of your lighting gear with you. So I'm just trying to eyeball the size of the gauge of the wool, but whenever I encounter a fluffy bit or just something that's giving it some texture, I'm just trying to turn it into like a little mini slub. But because they're randomly occurring, once I've finished the yarn and I've got the 3 bobbins while I'm flying it, they will sort of randomly line up. And occasionally what will happen is you'll get a spot where you'll have 2 or 3 slubs together. And now it's just really dark. Oh man. Let me try to adjust that a little bit. Is that better? It's not quite so dark. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so you'll find that when you are applying a yarn like this, those slubby bits may occasionally line up, and then the gauge in that particular spot might be bigger. So it might jump from like a sport weight all the way up to a worsted weight. But it's only for that one stitch. So if you wanted to make a garment where fit was still a key element of it, then you could absolutely employ this sort of principle for that yarn. But then you allow those little bits of texture to occasionally just come into the yarn. And since it's just in that one little spot, it's not going to affect the whole garment. And this is especially the case if you're going to be weaving with it, if you need to have a very specific gauge for a weaving project. So part of the reason why I'm doing it like this is because I might end up using some of this leftover yarn once I've made a scarf for myself in that project for making a blanket. So maybe if I can bring this up a little closer, you can maybe see that green one. Oh, come on. The camera just wants to focus on me. It like prioritizes faces. Oh, goodness. But yeah, come on, focus on this. Focus on my hands. it's not going to focus on anything, but hopefully you get the idea of what I'm talking about. If there's a slub that comes up and it's like slub, 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 and then nothing for a long while, it's still gonna be fine. Okay, so it does show up. Good. So, yeah. I will, like I said, I've got 3 bats, so 1 bat per bobbin. And then once I get this project all plied up, I will probably release the video on spinning it. But the first thing I have to do is I'm like chucking the bits of debris out the window. I just realized I was doing that. Down here, which you can't really see, but that's my the weaving project that I started from Tour de Fleece. So I keep it up here in the bedroom because it's really the only place that exists in the house that I can prop it up against the wall, and the bed is always cleared off, so I always have a good spot where I can sit and work that's comfortable, and especially in the afternoon I get some really great light in this room. So I've been kind of working on that back and forth, so I've had a couple of business meetings and I used that time to just do some weaving. So now that I've kind of explained and shown you what I'm doing, have any of you guys done something like this before? I mean, I don't think I'm alone in these methods, but sometimes I don't really know everything that's out there on the internet, and even if I went looking for it, I might not find it, just due to the nature of the internet. So has anyone else seen anything like this, or done this at home without like really thinking about it? Because honestly, I didn't look for a tutorial when I first started doing this. I forget exactly what I needed some yarn for, but I noticed that I was just focusing on making the wool the right gauge, but letting the add-ins that I put in there, they were like all different lengths, I just kind of let them exist, and the finished result looked great, so I kept doing it. Knobbly dog hair. Yeah. This would be really, really great for using up. You know those drum carded bits that, like for those of you who are drum carders, I always keep that bit that kind of builds up on the liquor drum that leads into the drum, the main drum, because it's still technically good wool. It's just short. And those fibers can always be added into other bats to make lots of texture. So that's one of the reasons why I started making my pottage bats, because I wanted to find a way to reuse this material. So what I do is I always put down a new layer of fresh wool, so it's stuff that's got a good staple length, and then I always put some of these short bits on top just to give it some visual interest. And essentially you could do the same project idea with a pottage bat, and it makes instant art yarn like we talked about last week. You could also do the same thing with hand cards. So even if you don't have a lot of equipment, even those little small dog brushes, you could make little rollags with them. And if you have any short bits of wool, you can always add in those short bits, so they go down first, and then you put your nice wool on the outside, on the top, and then you roll it up, And so you have kind of like this little mini rollag that's about that long, and the texture is on the outside of it, so that when you're spinning it, you actually get to see all that texture. So that's another way to spin a yarn kind of like this, even if you don't have a drum carder. So a drum carder is not necessary for creating a yarn like this. So hold on to those little extra bits, and if you got like those little mason jars, you know, they don't have to be that big. I know they come in a variety of sizes, but the ones I used to use were the ones that were about that big that people would use for canning. I got a whole bunch from, I think it was Goodwill, and I used those for all of my test dyeing back when I was beginning the foundations for expertly dyed. But I also found those were really useful for dyeing small bits of stuff, different colors, and it was also a really great way to use up dyes. So occasionally dye lots would change, and so just to ensure that my colors were all consistent, I might use the end of one batch for dyeing small things. So it's a really easy way to get lots of different colors with small bits, and so you don't need a lot of expensive equipment to dye. You can also just use food coloring or Easter egg dyes. That was my very first adventure, was food coloring and Easter egg dyes. And I think I even used yarn from Hobby Lobby. Yeah, those little bumps give it a very organic quality because, again, machines could make something similar to this, but they have tolerances. So as a human, I can actually tolerate quite a lot in terms of difference because I'm in control of it. So if I wanted to, I could have those disparities be much more pronounced in my yarn. But a machine would have so much that it was able to handle, so you'd kind of be restricted. So there's definitely a lot of scope for making just beautiful yarn with scraps and designing it for a whole range of projects that would benefit from having that visual interest. Oh, okay, so Sonia said I tried to make a 3-ply that has 2 plies in the S direction and 1 in the Z direction. That's something that I really haven't played around with too much. Generally what that creates is a more elastic yarn, and it's because when you, so I'm spinning right now Z, but if I had 2 Z and 1 S, then when I applied S, the S single would be over twisted, and so that changes the look and the feel of the yarn, because even though the 2 that were Z spun are now S plied, and so that sort of balance is achieved in the spin and ply, the one that was S spun is now over twisted. So you get some kind of cool effects. I forget, I had a spinning book at one point, but a lot of stuff got left in Korea and I don't have access to it anymore. So I don't have like any spinning books anymore. So, but yeah, I read this in a book and I can't even tell you which one it was. I should probably just buy them all again, but I've not really had time because of the PhD. But now that's done, so it's time to get back to other things that I've enjoyed doing that I have not been able to do. Was wondering if there's a way to fix a rollag that you made too tight. Ooh. So what you're saying is you've taken off the rollag and you've you've rolled it on itself so tightly that it doesn't draft nicely, right? That is a tough one. There may be a way, but I think it's also going to be contingent on the particular fiber you're working with and the staple length. So if it's a long staple length, it's going to curl back on itself more than once, more than likely. If it's a shorter staple length, then that might be possible. But really, probably the best thing to do in this case is to card them again. So that would mean if it's like if it's still rolled up, if you pull it apart this way, then you might just have to lay it down again, brush it out, and maybe use that part with something else. So let's say you've done half of your fiber this way, and you're like, oh no, I can't spin it like this. What do I do? What I would do is the bit that you haven't carded yet, leave that. Fix all of the rollags that are overdone. So you fix them, maybe they're more blended than you anticipated, but hey, it's fine. We'll just kind of work with it. Then you get all your other fiber ready, and then you use the bit that you've had to blend more, trying to undo that really tight rolling. Lay that down, combine them all together in the rollags. So all of the rollags that you make have a little bit of this oopsies fiber that you over-rolled in all of the rollags. But now that you've done them correctly by giving them a little bit more loft when you take them off your hand cards, then you're still going to be able to spin just fine with them. It might look a little different than you anticipated, but that's okay, you know. The other thing that you could do is card them and keep them separate, and then you can alternate plain one, blended one, plain one, blended one, and then, you know, sort of alternate that way, just to kind of get some that had sort of like the original concept that you were going for, and some that are slightly blended. In the end, it will still look fine. Like, I wouldn't worry about the yarn being dramatically different in that case. So I think that's probably two options I would go with if I've done this. And I actually have done exactly the thing that you're talking about. So that's how I would fix it. I don't know if steaming would help loosen it, because it's the length of the staple that's the main issue, and less so with compaction, although it could be both. So when I first got my blending board, I made basically wool poonies. So for those of you who aren't familiar with the terminology, a poonie is basically a rollag that is made with cotton, and because cotton is a short staple fiber, you need it to roll back on itself so that when you spin from it, you kind of get like this helical twisting in the yarn. So it works well with really short staples like cotton. But when you have a staple that's like this, you can see how it gets kind of coiled up on itself. So it's basically like a really, really tight curl. So like, you know, something like this, right? So when you're trying to spin with that, it becomes really, really difficult because it doesn't want to draft apart from itself very easily. And when I remember doing it, it sort of felt like playing tug of war with your wheel. And it wouldn't draft very well. Like, there's no way you could really get a good consistent yarn. Bits of it would be overspun. You'd have to constantly stop to like work out those really big slubs. So it's like, you know, you don't want it to just suddenly be like that big around. That's too much of a change for most projects. So yeah, hopefully, if this ever happens to you or has happened to you, there are a couple of ideas to employ to sort of help get you back on the path to spinning. So wow, look at this. All this yammering, and I'm still making progress. So I'm finishing this first strip here, which is such a wonderful thing to spin. If you've never spun with bats, there was actually someone in the Tour de Fleece who commented they just hate spinning bats. And I was really surprised by this because I always have found bats to be sort of like one of the epitomes of fiber prep because there's so much variation. Like, you can make custom blends, which is actually the main reason why I wanted to get a drum carder, was to make my own blends. But just like all of the colors and textures and all the different ways that you can lay down fiber onto the carding cloth and the ways that you can remove it, and then from there the ways that you can spin it. And because all of those fibers have been sort of pulled apart from their neighbors, they just generate a lot of loftiness. So yeah, and it uses the short and long fibers, so there's a lot less wastage with a drum carded bat than there is with, say, a hand-pulled roving from combs. So that's really great for worsted, but it doesn't really make a lofty yarn. And there's also quite a lot of waste produced from that. But yeah, just to sort of add some extra notes about what I'm doing. When I pre-draft this, it also helps with managing my grist, or the diameter of the yarn. So what I want to do is kind of like pull it open like this while I'm holding it, so that I can monitor how many or how much wool is going into the diameter of yarn. So because I'm really consistent with my treadling, I don't have to worry about the density of the yarn changing all that much. But when you are spinning this type of yarn where you've got lots of texture, occasionally you might slow down a little bit with your treadling in order to pull out like a really big clump. So I don't want huge clumps in this yarn. I just want some to give it some visual texture. But I'm still employing those skills relating to managing my grist so that the fiber diameter I'm producing is consistent overall, even if there are bits in the middle that are a little bit fatter because of all of that texture. So I'm kind of the hand that's closest to the wheel. I'm smoothing down the yarn as I'm spinning, and that's also helping to make sure that even if there is some texture, I've got it caught in the actual yarn that I'm making, because if I don't, then some of those bits will just pull out easily. So I just want to make sure that the top part of the fibers are caught in the twist and also the bottom part. And just this gentle smoothing is helping me check that what I'm drafting here on this side and the gauge that I'm getting on the other side is consistent given what I've already spun and what I've already done with this bobbin here. Yeah, that is yes, Sonia. Definitely don't want to play tug of war with your wool if we can avoid it. But you know, when you're still new to this stuff, or if you've not really explored all of the things, there's stuff that you don't know. So for example, I went to the guild meeting last Saturday, and there were a couple of ladies who were getting that spinning excellence certificate. I forget exactly what it's called. But they were talking about some of the things that they've had to do, because you have to do everything like to the letter. Like you can't just pretend, oh, well, this is sort of in this style. Like you have to do a worsted yarn with this specific way, or you have to do a woolen yarn carded in this specific way. And this is good for making all those foundational skills, and great for when you carry this forward, you know how everything is supposed to be done. And so I loved listening to them talk about this and sort of the insights that they've gained through this process, because even though they know how to spin and everything, going back and doing like a formal education with it has been really helpful, improving their spinning and understanding why things have to be the way that they are. But one of the ladies was talking to me about making rollags, and long draw is my nemesis. I have said in the past that I will do this more and get better at it, but I also didn't really know how to go about making the rollags. There's some things that you learn over just experience. Like when I first started, I put so much wool on them, and then I was just like playing tug of war with my spindle because I didn't have a wheel at the time. And when I've tried doing it later, I would always get these really huge slubs, so I couldn't get like that nice smooth long draw effect that you know you've probably seen other spinners do this too. And she gave me sort of like a quick little rundown of the way you're supposed to do it, and so I think I'm going to practice doing this in the future. But sometimes it's just like amazing to me how much you can learn and still not know. And it's part of the reason why these kinds of meetings, just like being able to sit down and kind of talk back and forth as best as we can with me talking to a camera and you guys writing in the chat. But I do hope you find it useful in sort of like expanding your skills repertoire, because it also helps me and encourages me to work on things that I might not otherwise. So I may need to revisit the making of rollags and just practice spinning long draw during these live streams. Because the only way you're going to get good at something is practice. Plain and simple. So, yes, never be dismayed that you don't know how to do something, or that you didn't do something a particular way or like a better way, because it's always going to be a work in progress. There's so much to learn and so much that we've just lost from the mechanization process. So, yeah, next time when it's becoming too hard to do the thing that you're trying to do, just ask. You can always message me on Instagram or by email. I can help get things figured out for you. Not a big deal. Oh, I kind of understand, Chris, where you're talking about being terrified of spinning cotton. I actually have a bit of cotton that my mom picked, I think while out on a walk. It's like wild cotton. And it's weird because it was growing in Illinois. And Illinois, as far as I know, is not a state that typically grows cotton. So she sent me some cotton seeds and the cotton, and I've just never gotten around to spinning it. And I think part of it is, yeah, just being really intimidated by that short staple and not really knowing how to spin it. Because, for example, when I was studying the British Iron Age, there was mainly just long bast fibers like flax and nettle and short staple wool, something probably that was like North Ronaldsy. So that would be like a double coated fleece. And this is probably the two things that they had to work with. They probably also had some some tree bast that they've used, based on the mats that we have from Must Farm, which is in Cambridgeshire. And that is a late Bronze Age site, so that's roughly around 850 BC, where my time period sort of starts around 800 BC, so for all intents and purposes, practically the same time period. I doubt a lot changed in that period of time. So they would have only been familiar with the methods to make those types of yarns and to work them into a variety of different types of fabrics. But in the modern world, we have access to fibers that come from literally all over the world. And so there's a much greater challenge for us as modern spinners trying to figure out how to spin and use all of these different fibers, because we're sort of taking them a little bit out of context, right? So if cotton doesn't grow in the UK, but I spin cotton, you know, it's kind of learning a new skill that traditionally people in this country, even before it was a country, would not know how to do, right? So it's sort of like transplanting the skills from a completely different context, a completely different country and climate, just because we're in a position to, import unspun cotton from somewhere else. Hi, Maureen. I'm glad that you find the streams helpful, Sonia. I mean, they're also a really great opportunity to just sit and have a spin and listen to someone yammer on about whatever for an hour or so. Yeah, I haven't actually worked with roving all that much. When I was first starting to spin, I bought a lot of farm roving, so like people who raise their own sheep, they would get their wool processed at a nearby mill, and then they would sell that to spinners. So I remember buying a lot from them, but when I got more adept with carding my own wool with my drum carder, I just don't buy it as much. Although I kind of have a desire to just get a bunch of fleeces processed at a mill and make spin rovings. I don't even know why, but it's sort of like an idea that I find quite tantalizing at the moment. Oh wow, so Chris picked and cleaned her own cotton from South Texas? Yeah, neat. Can you spin cottonwood fluff like cotton? Oh yes, if you're allergic to it, probably not wise to try. That's interesting. I actually don't know where cottonwood grows. I've heard of it. Let's see, you're in Montana, right? I don't know. Oh. So Maureen does stuff with the SCA. I've always wanted to get into these groups, but I've always just had a shortage of time. So here in the UK they have something called Girl Guides, which is kind of like Girl Scouts, but it's, I forget all the details. It sort of is the girl complement to the Boy Scouts. But it's all about employing a lot of these, well, learning and employing a lot of these skills that have some place in situations where you might not be able to access something. So it's like, I guess what you might consider slightly more domestic crafts, like learning how to sew, patch stuff, but also practical skills like how to start fires, how to keep yourself warm in the rain if you get out lost somewhere and people need to find you, that sort of thing. So I kind of, to me, I feel like the SCA is a bit like that for history and older groups. I know that you can be in Girl Guides until like teens anyway. I don't know the cutoffs for everything, but I wasn't in a position to do Girl Scouts when I was little, and I've kind of always lamented the fact that I couldn't be a Girl Scout. So I'm always on the lookout for doing things like this. And the SCA, I don't know if they do that so much here in the UK. But they must do something, because they do a lot of open-air museums and living history here. Although I don't know where I'm moving to, what the situation is. I'll have to find out. Yes, survival skills are so important to have. And something that a friend of mine has pointed out, if you'll remember back when I was at Nottingham during the Tour de Fleece, I recorded some bits from the Nottingham Castle visit, where they had all of these displays on ways to mend and take care of garments as a way to reduce the amount of textile waste. So keeping it fashionable, but also keeping like those elements of your wardrobe that are classic styles. You want to keep them in good condition so that they last a long time, so you're not replacing them, right? And that kind of skill is increasingly being lost, but as we've seen with the pandemic, a lot of channels on YouTube have kind of grown up on this idea of kind of going back and learning how to make stuff, learning how to redesign garments so that they fit us a little better, or taking something that, you know, it's like men's shirt into a nice fitted shirt for women, you know, stuff like that. A lot of channels have taken to putting their content on YouTube, and to be honest, I really think that the way that the world is right now, we're going to have to employ those skills in a more serious way going forward. And even though we are mainly focusing here on making yarn and beautiful things with said yarn, gardening and cooking, like learning how to manage your pantry so that you have a whole range of staples, so if money is ever tight, you have ways to create food out of not a lot. And then if you have the space and opportunity to grow stuff, like what should you grow so that you can have food? And definitely one of those things is potatoes. So my partner's really excited. The place that we're moving to has, it kind of overlooks an allotment. I'll have to do like a video of the surroundings once we're actually there. But he's like, yeah, I'm gonna get into making potatoes. I'm just gonna grow potatoes. And it sounds funny when you say it like that, but potatoes, you can grow a lot from just seed potatoes, and if you time everything right, you can actually produce a couple of kilos of ready-to-eat potatoes each week, and it's a really great starch. So yeah, like, it's, you know, a really valuable skill. And with the prices of everything going up, I mean, we've noticed it a little bit with our need to get takeout every once in a while to kind of help relieve us from the burden of packing and then also having to cook. It's a lot more expensive in some cases, depending on what we order. There's one place that we like to order from, and I was a bit shocked at just how expensive it had gotten. And when it got delivered, I was just surprised at, you know, what our money gave us. So, yeah, just SCA stuff. It sounds really cool. Community of like-minded people, kind of experimenting and researching and doing and engaging with public outreach and invigorating people to learn more about history. You know, it's all things I can get on board with. So that was a bit of a long aside. Yeah, so I used to be part of a reenactment group here, and they met twice weekly, but especially with the PhD, I just had less and less time, and I needed my weekends to myself. So one of the things I found was I was starting to get so stressed out that my whole body was aching and sore, and I got like this really incredible amount of joint pain, and it went away if I just relaxed and slept more. So I think the way that my stress manifests, it kind of like accumulates in my body and causes inflammation. Probably as a response, my body is telling me, hey, you need to relax, so we're going to cause some inflammation, so you do that. But yeah, I did that for almost a full year when I first got here. And it was another reason why I wasn't doing too much with Expertly Died, because I was very busy from 2015 to 16. Sorry about that. Yeah. And that's actually another important thing. So I know that like my parents' generation and their parents before them, they put a lot of stuff down for us so that we didn't have to kind of live the sort of lifestyle they did, where everything had to be made 100% at home, and just like the way that labor is distributed. You know, you go to work, you get money, then you come home and, you know, you've got all the money to buy the things that you need, and so we've got a lot of conveniences at our fingertips. So, you know, not to detract from all of the hard work to get us in this position, so that, you know, by my generation, and obviously the kids that are born, you know, in the 2000s, 2010s, you know, they have, you know, access to more things, and you know, can potentially lead a better life because generations before them have sort of laid out the groundwork so that their lives are better. But a lot of these skills have been lost, and even when I was in school, home economics just wasn't highlighted as an important course. But I also felt like I didn't really need it, because when I talked to friends who took the class, I had already learned all that stuff. Like, I knew what they did because my parents did this, my grandmother did this, so I just learned what you needed to do. But if you have a de-emphasis on the importance of those kinds of courses, then if you're not learning those skills at home and you're not really doing it so much at school, unless you have a specific interest in it, then you kind of lose those skills. So I'm very grateful to everyone who puts stuff out on the internet. Blogs, YouTube is a big one for me. Like, anytime I want to learn how to do something, I just go to YouTube. And sometimes I just watch stuff for fun. Like, I did not know you know, this sort of food existed until it came up in my feed. Hey, based on your interest or based on what people watch on this channel, they also watch this channel. And then you're like, oh, that's really cool. And so, you know, you learn stuff that you might not otherwise. And rather than criticizing younger generations for not knowing how to make a simple gravy sauce, you know, there's people passing these skills along online to encourage people who maybe couldn't get this from their own homes or from school, at least, you know, some instruction on how to do these things. I think we lost the light. I'll turn this up a little bit. Yeah, it's suddenly gone a little bit cloudy outside. Sorry about that. Yes, I think you're right, Maureen. The pandemic scared a lot of people into preparedness. Yeah, because, I mean, aside from those couple of staples that we struggled to get because we had been traveling to the States, we got eggs and flour, finally. And we were pretty set. Like, it was not a big issue for us trying to get ourselves fed because I knew how to cook. And my partner took this opportunity, being furloughed, to actually learn how to cook. So he bought himself a cookbook and a cast iron skillet, and I just kind of said, you know, make sure that whatever you cook is cooked correctly, right? You know, don't feed me something raw. And, you know, enough vegetables. Like, it has to be well balanced. And because I had cooked for him, and, well, we also cooked together too, but it was mainly me coming up with the recipes, he knew exactly what I was talking about in terms of proportions. And, you know, as a result, if dinner needs to be made, I'm like, can you just figure that out? Like, I'll eat whatever you make. I don't care. Just figure it out. And the other day, he made the most insanely good, like, chicken with pan sauce with noodles. Oh my gosh. After eating, so we always try to do enough for 2 servings and then leftovers. When I finished eating it, I just wanted to eat more. Wasn't hungry, but it was so good. I wanted to eat it again. So yeah, hopefully lots of other people who took to YouTube and learned from YouTube will be in a much better position now heading into these, you know, inflation hikes and the cost of everything, especially in the UK. If any of you have been watching headlines in the UK, our energy bills are actually through the roof. And I don't know what's going to happen, because it would be one thing if this were solely the result of the situation in Ukraine, but it's not. And we still have to keep our house warm during the winter, like everybody. And when you have cats, and one of our cats has asthma, so we have to keep the house warm enough so that she doesn't get sniffly and she coughs a lot. So, you know, it's just, you know, if we had a traditional child that had asthma, we'd have the same exact concern. So, you know, what's happening to people in those situations where they have really important need to keep a house at a certain temperature, but it's outrageous to afford, you know? So, yeah, so hopefully a lot of people have learned from the pandemic and will be able to take care of themselves better this winter. Yeah, Sonia, I'd totally go back to the SCA. most of the people that I have seen be in SCA, like Morgan Donner, she's part of an SCA, and whenever she's talked about her experiences, it always seems like so much fun. It's definitely a fear of missing out situation for me. Yeah, I can imagine. Maureen says that she's in the SCA and her partner finds the garb a bit amusing. But yeah, you know, if you don't want to wear it, it's fine. But if you want to know about it, that's also like the point. Some people, I really love embodying the historiosity elements of what people in the SCA do, because like when you wear those clothing items, you sort of feel different. It's kind of like stepping into a role, even if there's nothing defined by a script or a producer or a storyline. It's just, in some ways, you just become more like that person, or a person from that time period you are embodying. And so, yeah, like that close physicality that you get with the clothing, it changes your perspective. So when I did reenactment here, we mainly focused on fighting, like battles. So we would recreate some historic engagements. And for me, whenever I put on all of the gear, I really felt like someone else. Despite the fact that I had trained martial arts for years, reenactment felt different because I had different weaponry and different clothing that I wore. Yes. It is a scientific fact that stress does cause lack of sleep and inflammation. Yes. I didn't know that at the time, but in 2018, it was my worst year because I put a lot of pressures on myself, and I had to start writing, and I spent 3 weeks in Denmark with the Center for Textile Research doing like a summer seminar with them. And there was just like so much happening on this end, and I was dealing with a garden and, you know, household, like stuff I want to do, like keeping the house clean. I love keeping a clean house. It helps me manage my stress and anxiety if things are tidy. But I didn't know it, but by the end of that year, like, I just felt ill all the time. Like, my body always hurt. And yeah, it was just so much stress that I was giving myself inflammation through that stress and anxiety. And so, yeah, now that I know how those things are connected, because they weren't, it's one of those things about getting older that you don't recognize, and if you don't have someone explaining this stuff to you when you're younger and they're older, telling you about the differences between their situation when they were younger versus older, as it would apply to that situation, no one in my family has ever commented on having stress and anxiety and inflammation where it manifested in the joints, but there was literally no medical reason for it to exist. It's like, I don't have rheumatoid arthritis or anything, and no one in my family has ever had a history of it. So, like, I just dismissed it as, you know, I must be just exercising too much or something. But having reviewed it after I submitted my thesis, and I felt much better versus those 3 or so years beforehand, I was like, you know, I'm pretty sure there's something to this. So, I don't know if there's any other young people out there, but if you feel quite capable of managing an insane schedule of doing this, that, and 100 other things all the time, you'll find that when you're a little bit older, you're less capable of dealing with that. And so even though I'd say my schedules are pretty similar today as they were 10 years ago, my body can't handle that kind of strain like it used to. And, going forward, it's probably not smart to do because that can have a cumulative effect. I mean, a psychological one for sure. I'm still trying to lose weight from that situation, but I need for all of the major stressful situations in my life to kind of go away so that I can actually get back to the business of losing about 15 pounds that I gained during my thesis. Which, again, that's always a tough task because you always gain weight as you get older because your metabolism slows down. Oh, it's like a war of attrition here. Hi, Lana. Oh yes, the best compliment for a cook. He knows that he fed me really well. And it's funny too, because like, even though I've been cooking for, I don't know, 25 years or something, I'm always hesitant to think I did a good job cooking until I get a compliment. It's like, we want to express care and comfort to the people in our households, and we do that by holding out for the compliment. Because it's not the same as being like, yeah, this is pretty good. Being told, oh my god, this is so good, can I have more? It's nothing compare. Yeah, a lot of uncertainty. I mean, I'm actually fine with the unpredictability of life. I mean, I've kind of had to be because I made a split-second decision to move to Korea. Did it within 3 months. Coming here to the UK, I knew for sure that I was going to get a PhD, but all the other stuff that I have done in between, there's absolutely no way I could have predicted it, and I kind of like that part. But just being financially pressed for years, it's like, the situation in the States, everyone getting some loan forgiveness is helpful, but the struggle that I have had trying to find a job here has caused a lot of financial dependence, and because I consider myself able-bodied and intelligent, I don't want to prematurely be a burden on somebody if I can avoid it. And so I've, worked really hard with Expedite to kind of work through that, and thanks to, people like you guys are helping me become more financially capable in my family. So a lot of my anxiety comes from just not knowing if I'll actually be able to afford any of my bills and what my food situation is going to be. So if it weren't for the skills that I have learned over the years, I would not have made it through the month of February. I don't know what I would have done, but I made basically a paycheck through just, fixing people's stuff that they didn't know how to do for cash. So that money directly went into my belly so that we could eat for that month. And it's a short month. February is only 28 days. But yeah, if it weren't for that, I would not have been able to eat. But also, just in that constant need of searching out opportunities means that I don't really get a lot of downtime to just relax. Because even when I'm trying to relax, I'm still stressed out thinking, how am I going to get the money to pay for stuff? Like, I know certain bills are going to be coming, and if I don't have any money in my account, I don't know what we're going to do. Yeah. Maureen feels more. She says she feels more me in my Tudor garb than I do in my modern clothing. Yeah, definitely that personal connection with your personal history, you know, where your families come from, all that stuff. Yes. I am quite pleased with the fact that I've learned a lot of skills, so I can make my own booze, I know how to cook, I know how to garden, I know how to make lots of different things to keep myself warm. Yeah. It makes a big difference. I don't know. I think it would have been a tremendous thing to overcome, especially during the pandemic and having to write my thesis, if neither of us really knew how to cook. Because there were a lot of those scares saying like, oh, don't order for delivery, or, you know, check all your fruits and vegetables, like disinfect them. And it's like, because we didn't know, we were, you know, being overly cautious. So I think that would have been much more difficult for us to overcome if we hadn't had a lot of these skills already. Yeah, so... Oh, yeah, I totally know what you're talking about, Maureen, with the heart palpitations. I get those too. Yeah. Yeah, it feels like, it's almost like every once in a while you'll have like a really dramatic heartbeat for just that one beat. And it sort of comes, not like every single heartbeat, but it's like, I don't know, if you're really, really stressed out, it might be in a minute, it happens again. And sometimes when I've been so stressed out, I can anticipate it happening. And salt. I drink a lot of water, and so one of the things I often suffer from is low salt. And if I'm not really careful, there have been times when I've almost made myself unconscious from exercise because I've not put enough salt in my body. And you kind of need that to function. Yeah, so I totally know what you're talking about. In fact, a really famous person had this same condition, and the doctor basically said, you need to relax, you know, have a convalescence. And that person was Charles Darwin. And the doctor basically said, look, if you don't get your stress managed, this is going to be a perpetual condition that may have real ramifications on the functioning of your organs. Right? That's the 1800s. So, yeah. Yeah. Oh man. I spent so much of my 20s worrying about money too. It's one of the things that motivated me to leave the States and go to Korea, because I was doing everything I could. I was working full time, actually using my degree in that job too, and I was operating expertly died, and it still wasn't enough for me to survive. Like, I was practically bankrupt every month. Like, I would get down to zero in my account by the end of every month. And yeah, so I saw a doctor about it, and she basically said, you need to find ways to de-stress. And I kept looking at her thinking, it sounds nice when you put it that way, but my reality won't let me, because if I work less, I can't eat, I can't pay my bills, and I certainly don't want to default on my student loans. The government doesn't like that. Oh, thanks, Chris, for joining us. You have a great week ahead too. I'm definitely gonna pace myself as much as I can. Oh, you guys are so nice. Saying hi and bye to everyone. It's like we're really here, all together in one room. We actually move in 1 week from now. And that's kind of scary because this is the first big move that I've had here in the UK. So I've moved twice before. So I moved right into the dorms, and then I moved into shared accommodation, and then to here. They've all been within like a mile of each other. So we're moving about 80 miles away, and also moving with 2 cats, which I've never done before. I've had cats most of my life, but when I moved internationally, it was too stressful to move with a bunny, so I had to rehome him before I left. And we don't have cars, so that kind of adds to the situation. And because I've never moved here with a moving company, I have no idea what to expect. When my parents moved, we always rented a vehicle, and we would load it up ourselves, and then we'd move that. And even when I was moving stuff from the US to a storage facility, we drove the car up there, you know? So, I'm just trying to get everything in place before we go. And like I said, I'm trying to make sure that there are as few interruptions with the channel as I can manage. Mainly because this is really good meditation for me. Like, it kind of allows me the opportunity to just take a break and talk about stuff. And obviously making yarn is therapeutic, so I'm obviously not packing boxes while I'm making yarn. Yeah, paycheck to paycheck. I mean, we still actually do that now. I'm just happy that we're basically both going into full-time jobs, and they've got a lot of craft markets in Cirencester, so I'm also hoping to do sort of local trade shows, because I'd like to get my yarn into shops, but I don't know what the local scene is like there, and so far I've not had a lot of great luck contacting the right shops for my yarn. So yeah, that's a little bit of a struggle, but also, I mean, especially here in the UK, who's really thinking about knitting with wool during those hot days? So yeah, I have my work cut out for me, but I was just talking with a friend of mine the other day, and it sounds crazy, but right now I only have about 20 hours of paid work each week, and I feel like I work myself all the time. Like, I'm constantly doing this or that, trying to make content or products or list stuff or research ideas, or just, you know, trying to make headway. And if you have a regular income and you're in a position where you're living within your means, you actually free yourself up mentally and financially to have more spare time. And it sounds crazy to think of it this way, but it legitimately happens. So I remember when I have been in a full-time job and I'm financially secure, I've had loads of times, like going out to eat because, you know, there's not much at home, and you know, we're hungry and we just need to eat something. We don't have that luxury right now, but working full-time, it satisfies a basic need, right? We need to eat, so we just go and do the thing. And if you're financially capable of doing that on those occasions, then it sort of keeps your stress level way down low, and you're free from having to go to the grocery store, having to cook, having to clean up afterwards. So yeah, it's more expensive, but if you have the extra capital, then, you know, you can do that sort of thing. And so you don't think about working 20 hours and then trying to make everything from scratch as being more time consuming, because you think, oh, well, if you're only working this much, you should have loads of extra time. You actually don't. So we don't have a dishwasher, and I haven't had a dishwasher in 10 years. So doing the dishes after cooking a meal and also going to the grocery store, and if they don't have what I need at the current grocery store, I either have to decide, well, what else could we eat so that I can make the going to the grocery store part more efficient, or, you know, I have to just plan and then try to get as much from one store as possible, and, you know, do that accordingly. But that actually adds a lot of extra time. And so I'm doing that in addition to finding ways of making myself more financially stable. And pretty soon, I'm definitely working more than a full-time work week, and I don't have the luxury of eating a meal out because I can't afford it. So it's like, when all of those efforts don't pay out financially, you just don't have as much free time, and then that sort of weighs on you emotionally, where it's like, I can't justify buying this or doing that because I need to be spending my time looking for something that is actually going to give me some kind of financial turnaround. Maybe I'm alone in this, but I really do think that there's some kind of connection there with how we get more spare time if we're financially secure. And it doesn't have to be through full-time work per se, but it usually is. I don't know if any of you have found that, but I've sort of realized this based on the times I have been more financially secure. I did not learn how to make kimchi, but I love eating it. So we've got a Kmart, I don't know, it's a L Mart right around the corner from us. And it's the same kimchi that I ate when I was in Korea. It's really good. I could probably get into making kimchi. In fact, I may do, because I have this whole idea of making more like pickled and preserved foods. So my dad's side of the family, like my aunt, she just does this a ton. So they take whatever they grow in the garden, and then they make sauces or jams, jellies, pickles, etc. And they've been doing it since I was a kid, so I'm really familiar with it. But I've not really done it so much in my adulthood. So I would like to get into doing that. So I might make homemade kimchi, because it's so good. Like, kimchi fried rice is one of the most simple meals. And it's kind of like, if you already like eating like chicken or vegetable fried rice from like a Chinese restaurant, kimchi fried rice is very similar, but it's a little spicier. It's so good. If you like spicy food, it definitely hits that spicy note for you. Oh, well, yeah, I've always had to self-move because I've not been able to afford a moving company. So it's been good for me having a vehicle that is large enough to move all of the stuff that I own. And, to be honest, I don't really accumulate a lot of stuff. Like, you know, whenever you've lived somewhere for a while and then you have to do kind of a clear out before you move, so you don't just pack stuff that you don't want to keep. we have actually thrown away so little through this process. In fact, I only took a few things to the actual charity shop. A couple things I donated to a friend because she could use them. But I think we just threw away a few things that were just actually broken and could not be salvaged. And that was it. So it's probably another reason why our moving has been pretty streamlined. And if you were to put all our boxes together in one room, it's probably not that bad. Okay, thanks, Lona, for joining us today. Yeah, kimchi, oh, it's so good. It's probably one of those foods from Korea that I crave pretty regularly, and it's good that my partner likes spicy food, and he likes making it, so he makes it for us. Aw, thanks. Yes, if you would be so kind to leave a like, that would be great. Oh my gosh, a cabbage pounder. It sounds like a torture device for all vegetables. Yes, the time investment has been like one of the things I've noticed the most this year is just my time goes into just taking care of myself and my house. So where we're moving to, there is no dishwasher, but working full time means we can get like one of those little countertop ones. Because I don't usually like to put, pots and pans in a dishwasher anyway. They last longer if you wash them by hand. So really, it's just like glasses and plates and cutlery and things like that that need to be washed more regularly. And if you're like us, we have the correct glasses for pretty much everything. So we have water glasses, red wine glasses, white wine glasses, stuff for our whiskey and sherry, mugs of all sorts for espresso, for flat whites, for filter. We have a lot of glasses for things. And so, like, some days we will go through all the assortment, especially during the holidays. Oh, cocktail glasses. But yeah, having a bit more income means that we can actually afford to get a little countertop unit. And also, if you have cats, you know that they definitely prowl the kitchen while you're away or sleeping. And so up until now, Layla has not been allowed into the kitchen, but we have an open floor plan that we're moving into. So that means we have to make sure that all the dishes are done, or at least covered up. And so a dishwasher, a little mini dishwasher might be really helpful for that. Aw. Vernon said, having worked so many years with no time to be home, going out to eat was basically the norm. Today, home-cooked meals is a luxury I worked all my life to enjoy. Yeah, when I used to be really busy with my MA, I wanted to be out and about rather than at home cooking all my meals. So I spent quite a lot of money in order to do that, but I also got to see a lot of the country, I got to meet a lot of people, I got to be involved in a lot of events, and then I didn't have to worry about so much the eating part. And also when you are traveling a lot as an academic, going to conferences all the time, you end up eating out a lot. And there were definitely times when, like for example, when I was in Copenhagen, to save money, I just ate whatever food I could find from the local grocery store. So it all had to be either bought and eaten that moment. Like I'd get salads from the from the cold section, or it was all room temperature stuff. So like I would eat. It was basically like an Elvis sandwich, cold. It was a bit of rye bread with peanut butter and bananas on top. So eating all of that cold food, actually, I don't even know how to describe the feeling, but it was sort of like this sensation that the only thing I wanted the most was hot food. And because everything in Denmark is really expensive, even by British standards, like as an American going into Denmark, I was like, wow, everything is super expensive here. My body just got to a point where it craved nothing but hot food. Like, I was emotionally a wreck for 2 weeks because I needed hot food and I wasn't giving myself any hot food. Which is probably like a whole other story about like if you're traveling and you don't really have the opportunity to do a lot of cooking, or if you play D&D and your characters are always eating trail rations. You don't sort of think about the psychological impact of eating home-cooked warm food regularly and then suddenly for maybe a couple of weeks just not. It was quite a dramatic thing. I was happy when I was done with that. I wanted someone to make a meal for me. I hear you, Sonia. My dad, he worked for the U.S. Postal Service for 40 years, and he was sort of the main income earner of our family, and because my parents wanted me to have a better education than what they had, they worked really hard to make sure that we lived in the right sort of area so that I could be in the right sort of school so that I could get the right sort of education that would allow me to pursue a PhD. So because of that, my dad would often work his days off, so he would work every day but Sunday, and he would often work overtime those same weeks. And my mom now, she is retiring in like 4 or 5 days, September 2nd, and the kind of job she's got, she's a correctional room officer for a county jail, and she has to work in 8-hour shift increments. So whenever she does overtime, it's a full 8 hours. So she would work 16 straight hours locked in the building. And due to the nature of the job, you just kind of have to stay seated the whole time. So yeah, for her, like all of that overtime is finally paying off. She's able to retire earlier than she might have been otherwise. But yeah, it's I totally understand what you mean, and I'm so thankful that she's able to retire and do things that she wants to do now. Yeah, so Maureen says, yes, there is a direct correlation. You do have some more time when financially independent. And that's facilitated by having a job where you can pay all your bills and be free to have those options. Yeah. Yeah, so Vernon said YouTube needs to install a like button in chat threads so we can acknowledge comments. I think Chris said that the last live stream we did, she said she wanted to like all those comments people were making. I think maybe there's something with Discord. I haven't been able to set this up, and I know some other YouTubers you might have heard of, like Abby from Abby's Yarns and Evie from Jillian Eve. They have Discords. So maybe it's a feature in Discord. I would be a bit surprised if it wasn't. Yeah, 16-hour days. They're very rough. And sometimes they're just boring. Like, you might just be watching people sleep for the better part of 3 or 4 hours. On call 24/7, yeah, has got to be the worst. Were you like a doctor or a nurse, Vernon? Or like a first responder or something? Oh my gosh, Sonia. 10 to 14 hours, 6 days a week. Yeah. And, you know, obviously to make my present situation feel a little bit worse is I've not been able to properly decompress from my mom's visit or share a lot of the things that happened while she was here. So, like, my personal Facebook, I've been wanting to post photos from the trip while she was here. I wanted to put my graduation photos up. I wanted to edit them a little bit so I get the lighting just right. I wanted to announce that we found jobs and we're moving, and I haven't done any of this. So I'm definitely looking forward to just being on the other side of having moved and done and earning an income that allows me to just relax for a little bit. And buy the things I need. So, like, I don't have a stand for my loom, which is part of the reason why it's just in here up against the wall. So one of the things I want to do is get a stand for it so I can actually do more videos with it. And it's not even that expensive, but it's sort of like, you know, stand for the loom or food. Or buying the cats their food or litter, you know, just there's always something that comes up. We're having to pay the water bill. Which we pay every 6 months here. So sometimes it's just like, oh yeah. Well, I guess the stand is going to have to wait. Oh, and I did actually manage to sell my other wheel. So because we're moving to a slightly smaller space, I had to downgrade from 2 wheels to 1. So I just have my Kromsky now, and I've sold the other wheel. And once we take it to the new location and send it off with its owner, one of the things that I want to do is get a bulky flyer attachment for this wheel so that we can do more tutorials with making art yarn. Because ever since I had to leave my Babe wheel behind in Korea and it got sold, I've not been able to do a lot of those more crazy art yarn tutorials, mainly because I don't get a big enough skein with this particular, like the original size bobbin and flyer, and also the size of the orifice. So I have a yarn that's actually bigger than this orifice, so I wouldn't be able to make that yarn again. But I love making those big bulky yarns because they make projects go really quickly. And also, if you're going to make rugs, like rug yarn is something that I want to explore, because even though the place we're moving to is carpeted, I'm going to want some rugs that are just nice around, and, you know, stuff for the cats. So they love wool. They can tell the difference between acrylic and wool, so I'll make some stuff for them. But I need to get a conversion kit for this one. Oh my gosh, you would get called to work while you were already there? Oh my gosh, Vernon. Oh my goodness. Sonia's added in that her uncle worked as a lineman for years and was forever getting called in while he was already at work. Goodness. So, how are we doing today, guys? Like I said, I am excuse me. Excuse me. I am going to be moving this time next Sunday, so I won't be able to do a live stream. So what should we do? I'll probably be focusing on moving, but I could maybe try and get like a video to come out on Sunday, or we could just hold off until next Tuesday, which is crazy. I'll be in a completely different location next week. Well, the week after. So a week from Monday, I'll be in a completely new location. Oh, and fun fact. So we got our wool bed. It's going to be delivered on September 5th. And so we're going to have to sleep overnight on the floor. I thought my days of just crashing literally on the floor were over. Nope. So we're moving from a furnished place to an unfurnished place, and we don't own a bed, so this is actually not our bed. So because we're doing all the moving and I don't know actually when we're going to be there, it makes sense to have it delivered the next day. So I must be insane. What am I doing? I suppose if I had thought about it, I probably could have booked us a B&B to stay overnight so that we have somewhere to sleep. The cats would be fine on their own overnight. Goodness. Oh man. Yes, cats make for the wall all the time. Oh, train engineer. You had to answer the tea kettle. Yes. Okay, so I guess based on you guys, sometimes I just need to be told it is okay to take some time off. Even though, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm kind of in charge of my own schedule. I like having the consistency of a schedule and doing things for people, and you know, I'm sure on your end it's kind of like a fun thing to look forward to, at least I hope. So when I don't put them out when I feel like I probably should, I feel like I'm letting people down. I don't want to do that. So I am still endeavoring to get a video out next week. I actually packed all my makeup, so it might be me au natural. So I might get that out less consistently. I might get it out Tuesday or Wednesday, depending on how things go, because I always try to release to Patreon first, so they get a first look at everything without ads before I make it public. But I'll let you know if you just follow my socials, which are in the description. You'll get a little notification when I set a premiere available. But yeah, so I guess we'll do I'll keep trying to do live stream on Sundays if I can, but I might have to shift the schedule around depending on when my job needs me to work. So we'll kind of broach that bridge when we get to it. Yeah. Oh, hi, Crystal. Have you just popped in? I was just saying at the start that you're like always here. First one. Yeah. I am, yeah, I'm hoping going forward I'll be working for the love of working. Like, I would do these things even for one person. But, you know, I am still trying to keep the YouTube algorithm happy so that it recommends my material to other people. Because unfortunately, that's just how the algorithm works. But my schedule that I implemented a few weeks ago is actually working out really, really well. So I will try to keep that going forward. So yeah. So we might be doing this on a different day. Might be sometimes on Sundays. Other times it might be like Saturdays. But I will try to keep you posted and give you some notifications by scheduling it in advance. Preferably with the topic if I can think of one or if we've got one selected, but otherwise I'll just kind of skip it. We may be these bobbins for that next live stream. So actually be able to see how it looks after all the spinning is done. So maybe for those of you who want the continuity, that'll be good. But yeah. Oh, Crystal, you just woke up. No more late night sleeve knitting. There's a YouTuber who did a challenge to knit an entire sweater in 24 hours. I can't imagine. She probably must have been very tired by the end of that. Yeah. Yeah, moving is a huge pain, but I'm hoping it's going to be easier with just having less stuff. So, once I actually get these 3 bobbins spun, I'm just going to leave it and then do the plying for the live stream when we are able to meet up again. And so I'll probably also use some of this footage for when I talk about Shetland, because I've also got another Shetland fleece that I can do a spun sample with that doesn't have all of these little fibery extras in there for that fiber talk. So I think maybe the Shetland will be the next one I do. I have still a couple more in reserve, and if you have any suggestions on future fiber talk episodes that I haven't done, let me know, because if I can get a hold of the wool, then I will do it. I think I still have like 4 or 5 technically in reserve. Yeah. It's like me and cleaning. Once I've actually gotten underway with cleaning the house or packing things up, I just want to go until I collapse. So if you've been stalling out on a project and you've just got this one sleeve left to go, just finish it. Goodness, that is quite a challenge. Speaking of which, I still have to finish my V-neck sweater project, and I've just packed up all of my dye materials today, so I won't be able to do any dyeing for a couple weeks. But yeah, I'll get back to that project, I promise. So anyway, thank you for sticking with me and the stream. It's been a shocking 2 hours. I didn't even know I was going to have this amount of energy, because I literally had to take a power nap before the live stream, because I didn't think I was actually going to make it and didn't have time to make a cup of coffee. So, oh, hi Deborah. Good morning. We're winding down the stream. Sorry for that, but there will be plenty for you to go back and watch. And I do talk about the wheel a little bit. I love this Kromsky Minstrel. It's my favorite wheel so far that I've been able to use. And still haven't decided if I'm going to pack it, but we'll see. We'll see. Anyway, I will see you, I guess, in person, or digitally in person, in a couple of weeks. And I will get some videos out, and maybe I'll post some like short clips or something to Instagram, kind of showing you where I'm living now, yeah, kind of take things from there, trying not to plan too much. Don't want to overcommit just yet. I am still going to finish my New Year's crafting resolution, because I will get it done this year. I've been kind of saying that for months, but it will happen. Anyway, thank you guys again. If you could, give me a like. Subscribe if you haven't already. If you are still interested in spindles, I've just put the last bit on my Etsy and on expertlydyed.com. So if you missed out on the other bunches, they're up there now. Going to trickle in a few more things into the Etsy shop. So please take a look there if you are in need of any yarn or fibery stuff. Oh yes, and I've already built my dream studio in The Sims 4. Maybe I'll do like a capture of that later so you can see the craziness. I wanted to sort of visualize the space and what I could put in there and how I could like set things up, but I'm really looking forward to actually being able to build a studio with my own furniture rather than just using what I have provided, which has not been great. So yeah, that might actually be fun, doing like a little studio tour. So yeah, so thank you guys again for watching, and if you follow my socials, I'll try and keep you updated as best as possible going forward. And as always, if you have any ideas or any struggles, you know, something you don't really know the answer to, feel free to message me, and I'll try and help sort that with you. But yeah, I will see you guys later. Thank you guys so much for watching.